Have you ever sat by the window, watching the seasons change, and felt like you were fading with the leaves? Like life is moving too fast, and somehow you're being left behind. A woman once told me, "I used to feel seen. Now I feel shelved." She had spent her life raising kids, serving her church, pouring herself out for others. But when her hair turned silver and the house turned silent, a question echoed in her heart: what now? And she wasn't bitter, just invisible, forgotten. And she's not alone. Whether you're in your 50s, 60s, 70s, or simply sensing the slow shift of time, there's a hidden fear that creeps into even the most faithful hearts. Does God still have a purpose for me, now that I'm older? Let that question hang there for a moment, because the answer is not just yes. It's a roaring, joy-filled, destiny-defining, absolutely yes. And it's written in the very breath of Scripture. But before we unlock it, let me tell you about James. James was a quiet man in our church. Tall, gentle, always wearing a navy sweater, always sitting in the back row. He barely spoke during Bible study, but when he did, everyone listened. He didn't post on social media. He didn't run a ministry, but he prayed for hours. And if you ever asked how he was, he'd just smile and say, "I'm just finishing well." One night, he told me he had memorized Psalm 71. I asked him why that psalm. He said, "Because it was written for people like me, who still want to matter, even when their strength is fading." And that is where everything changes. Psalm 71 isn't just poetry. It's a prayer. It's a declaration from someone who's no longer young, but not done. A man crying out, "Do not cast me away when I am old. Do not forsake me when my strength is gone." So Psalm 71:9, it's raw, it's real, and it's holy. The man who wrote this psalm wasn't asking to be young again. He wasn't praying for fame or comfort. He was asking to still be useful to God, and God answered him, not with retirement, but with renewed purpose. In verse 18, he writes, "Even when I am old and grey, do not forsake me, my God, till I declare your power to the next generation." Did you catch that? Even in old age, God's mission is still alive. You are still called to declare His power, to pass down His faithfulness, to plant legacy. This isn't about age, it's about impact. Jesus told us in John 15:16, "You did not choose me, but I chose you and appointed you so that you might go and bear fruit. Fruit that will last." Fruit that lasts doesn't come from the energy of youth. It comes from the wisdom of walking with God over time. Think about it. Who mentored Paul? An older man named Barnabas, who recognized baby Jesus at the temple. An old woman, Anna, who prepared the way for David to be king. The prophet Samuel, who served into his twilight years. And Jesus, he said, "The harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few." He never said young workers. He just said workers. C.S. Lewis once said, "You are never too old to set another goal or to dream a new dream." But more than dreaming, God calls you to build, to speak, to lead. Even if it looks different now, you are not a bench warmer in God's kingdom. You are still on mission. But here's the twist. You might be saying, "That's beautiful, but I don't feel useful anymore. My body aches. My circle is small. My memories are louder than my present. What could I possibly offer now?" Ah, friend, what if the very things you see as limitations, your gray hair, your quiet house, your slower pace, are tools in God's hands? What if wisdom speaks loudest when it whispers? What if your story, every scar, every tear, is the exact message someone younger desperately needs? What if your later years aren't a closing chapter, but the climax of your testimony? Drop a comment below if you've ever asked, "Do I still matter to God?" Type the words, "I still have purpose," because you do. You're not forgotten. You're being repositioned for something deeper. The enemy wants you silent. God wants you singing still. Psalm 71:14 says, "As for me, I will always have hope. I will praise you more and more." Not less, more. And that's the heartbeat of Psalm 71, not retirement, but revival. But here's the burning question we must face next. What does it actually look like to live out purpose in your later years, when strength is limited but the calling is still strong? Is it ever too late to start again, to rebuild something eternal? Stick with me. Drop a comment right now with the words, "I still have purpose." Let's fill the comment section with testimonies of hope in the later years. And if this message is already stirring something inside you, share it with someone who feels forgotten, because no one in God's kingdom is ever shelved. Let's return to that question. What does it actually look like to live out purpose when your body is tired, your influence feels small, and the world seems to run faster than you can keep up? That's not just a poetic question. It's the reality for so many of us. And it was the reality for Mary. Not young Mary, the one who gave birth to Jesus, but older Mary, the one who watched her son die, then rise again, and still chose to stay and serve. Imagine her, decades after the resurrection, quietly disciplining younger women in their homes. No spotlight, no stage, just wisdom, warmth, and legacy. That is purpose. Too often we equate purpose with platforms, followers, energy, doing. But God's vision of purpose is deeper. It's not about pace, it's about presence. Remember Psalm 71:18. "Even when I am old and grey, do not forsake me, my God, till I declare your power to the next generation." Did you notice the till? That till is everything. It means, I'm not done yet. Not until the next generation knows what you've done for me. There's no retirement clause in the Great Commission. You don't age out of God's plan. You age deeper into it. Let me tell you about Ruth, not the biblical one, though we'll get to her. This Ruth was in her 70s when her husband passed. She felt like her life had shrunk overnight. The phone stopped ringing, her calendar emptied, and the ache of loneliness settled into her bones like winter. One day she walked into a community Bible study, sat in the back, and cried quietly through the whole session. The leader approached her afterward and simply said, "Would you come again next week?" She did, week after week, and eventually the younger women started gathering around her. Not because she was the loudest, but because she carried something they didn't yet understand. Depth. They didn't need her to be trendy. They needed her to be true. Now Ruth leads that Bible study, not because she sought it, but because her quiet, yes, became a lighthouse to others. You see, in God's economy, nothing is wasted, not even pain. Just like the original Ruth in the Bible, who was widowed and weary, but still chose faithfulness, and became the great grandmother of King David. Imagine that a woman who thought her story was over ended up in the bloodline of Jesus himself. And yet some of us still wonder, can anything good still come from my life? Let me ask you something deeply personal. What if your most impactful years are the ones ahead, not behind? What if your influence isn't measured by noise or speed, but by faithfulness, trust, and presence? Jesus didn't start his ministry at 20. He began at 30 and only worked for 3 years, but the depth of his life changed eternity. You're not late. You're not lagging. You're right on time for what God still wants to do through you. But here's where the twist comes in. Because while Psalm 71 is full of hope, it's also brutally honest. In verse 20 it says, "Though you have made me see troubles, many and bitter, you will restore my life again." Do you see that tension? Trouble and restoration, bitterness and revival, scars and songs. Some of you watching this have been through things you haven't even spoken aloud. Loss, abandonment, betrayal, seasons where you begged God for healing that didn't come, and all you got was silence. But even in that silence, He was shaping your testimony. C.S. Lewis wrote, "Hardships often prepare ordinary people for an extraordinary destiny." That's not just a quote. That's truth, because in God's kingdom, scars become stories, and stories become seeds, and seeds grow into trees that shelter the next generation. So maybe, just maybe, your purpose isn't something new to chase, but something already growing in the quiet soil of your life. You're not at the end. You're in the middle of the masterpiece. If you believe that, even a flicker of it, drop this in the comments. My story still matters. Let's flood the chat with declarations of continued calling. Let's speak against every lie that says, "You're done," and replace it with truth that says, "God's just getting started." And if you're watching this and feeling a tug in your heart, a pull that says, "I want to be used by God again, but I don't know how," take a deep breath. You don't need a strategy. You need surrender. Start where you are, with who you are, and God will do the rest. James, the man I told you about earlier, passed away last winter, but weeks before, he whispered something to me in the hallway of our church. "I think I've finished well." Not because he was perfect, but because he never stopped believing God still had something left for him to give. And now his prayers are still echoing in the lives of those he quietly poured into. That is legacy. But now here's the question that lingers in the air like holy fire. If God has promised purpose in our later years, how do we actually walk it out with joy, confidence, and power when everything in us feels slow, tired, or unsure? There's a secret in Psalm 71 that we haven't unlocked yet, and it holds the key to reviving your spirit, not just your body. Let's go deeper. Comment below with the words, "My story still matters." Encourage someone else who feels forgotten, because your words might be their turning point. And if you've ever felt God stirring something new in your later years, share that moment. You never know how your testimony might water someone else's dry season. There's a secret hidden in Psalm 71, a truth that doesn't just comfort, it awakens. And it's found not in the strength of the body, but in the rhythm of the soul. We've talked about purpose. We've uncovered the legacy buried in gray hairs and quiet prayers. But now we uncover the engine behind it all. Psalm 71:3 says, "Be my rock of refuge, to which I can always go. Give the command to save me, for you are my rock and my fortress." Always go. That's the phrase. That's the secret. That's the rhythm. The psalmist doesn't just cry out to God once. He goes back again and again. In joy, in sorrow, in weakness, in praise, in confusion. He has made God his constant place of return, and that is where purpose is reborn. Not in trying to feel strong, but in being deeply rooted. Not in trying to do more, but in being with the one who holds every moment, young and old. This is the mystery of growing older in God. It's not about doing less or more. It's about being more deeply connected. Jesus illustrated this with a vine and its branches. In John 15:9-4-5 he says, "Remain in me, as I also remain in you. If you remain in me and I in you, you will bear much fruit. Apart from me you can do nothing." Nothing. So many of us, especially in our later years, try to reignite purpose through doing, serving more, pushing harder, staying busy. But Jesus invites us into remaining, into stillness, into the kind of abiding that births fruit without force. C.S. Lewis captured this so beautifully when he said, "We are not necessarily doubting that God will do the best for us. We are wondering how painful the best will turn out to be." Remaining is not passive, it's powerful. It's choosing to stay rooted when the world says to drift. It's choosing to believe God still speaks, still moves, still calls your name, no matter your age. Let me share one final story with you. Her name is Alina. She was 88 when she started a handwritten letter ministry at her church. Why? Because she said, everyone texts now. No one writes anymore. And sometimes people just need something to hold on to. She wrote one letter every day to widows, college students, new believers, grieving families. She would pray over each envelope before sealing it. No audience, no fanfare, no digital footprint, just paper, pen, and purpose. At her funeral, they had to bring out extra seating. People came from cities away, holding tattered envelopes. Some said they were the only encouraging words they'd received all year. One letter, one voice, one woman who refused to believe she was done. That's what Psalm 71 is calling us to. Not flashy movements, but deep-rooted impact. Not louder voices, but more eternal echoes. Because the world may celebrate speed, youth, and visibility, but God celebrates faithfulness. Psalm 71:24 says, "My tongue will tell of your righteous acts all day long." Not until retirement, not until others notice. All day long. That is the legacy of a believer who knows I still have breath. I still have a voice. Therefore, I still have a calling. So what does it look like? It looks like mentoring someone younger, even when you feel irrelevant. It looks like praying through your neighbor's name list, even if they never know. It looks like smiling at the grocery store clerk and calling them by name. It looks like writing the letter, saying the prayer, showing up again. Because fruit grows where faith is planted. And here's the truth no one tells you: in God's eyes, your later years might just be the most fertile soil of your life. Because it's in these years that pride softens, distractions fade, and your soul finally leans fully on the rock. You are not here by accident. You are not waiting to die. You are living to declare. So if something inside you is waking up right now, don't silence it. If you feel God tugging your heart, if you're remembering dreams you buried, if there's a fresh ache to be used again, write it in the comments. I'm ready to live on purpose. Let's speak it together. Not with fear, but with fire. Because Psalm 71 is not the whisper of someone giving up. It's the war cry of someone choosing to finish well. So don't hide your story. Don't mute your testimony. Don't shrink into the shadows because you think your best days are behind you. They're not. They're right in front of you, and God is not done writing. Your legacy might not be written in headlines, but it will be etched into hearts. That's why this promise is so powerful, because it's not about feeling young again. It's about feeling alive in Him. Right here. Right now. So take a deep breath, lift your eyes, and say it with me. Out loud if you dare. Even when I am old and gray, do not forsake me, my God, till I declare your power to the next generation. That's the prayer. That's the promise. That's the purpose. And it still lives in you. If this message touched you deeply, comment below with the words, "I'm ready to live on purpose." Then tag someone who needs to hear this. Someone who's felt forgotten. Someone who needs to be reminded. You're not done. You're just getting started. Because in God's kingdom, the best is never behind you. It's always unfolding.